The story had already reached its grand finale by the time I showed up. I was the unlucky latecomer, transmigrated into the body of the rich and powerful villain who meets a tragic end. At first, I was ecstatic, thinking that after 22 years of poverty, my luck had finally changed and I'd struck it rich. I planned to order a flashy, custom sports car that very night. But when I opened my phone with a racing heart and trembling hands, I saw a balance of only $20, and a subscription renewal notice immediately swiped 19 of it. It was then I finally realized the truth. The original owner of this body, spurned by the heroine, had repeatedly framed the hero, leading her to rally her allies and bankrupt my entire family, the Fiancées. I didn't get to enjoy any of the wealth when the family was on top, but now that they're bankrupt and the money's gone, here I am. The scorching sun made me dizzy. I viciously tossed the half-eaten, gristly meat pie I was eating into the trash and decisively threw myself in front of an approaching luxury car. A piercing screech of tires filled the air as I poked my head out of the shrubbery, face contorted in a grimace. I yelled at the driver, "Nice driving, lady. You sent me flying a good 20 yards." The door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and the story's hero and heroine, Leo Carter and Isabella Frost, emerged, draped in designer brands. They looked priceless and elegant, a stark contrast to my pathetic state. The hero, Leo Carter, put on a gentle, innocent act, covering his mouth with a hand in an exaggerated display of shock, like an actor in some soap opera. "Ethan? Ethan Vance? Why are you dressed in such rags?" Then, flashing an expensive watch on his wrist, he made a show of stepping toward the bushes to get a better look at my sorry condition. I immediately yelled, "Don't move. This is the scene of an accident. You can't disturb it, or it will affect the settlement negotiations." Leo's outstretched foot twitched, and he hesitantly pulled it back. In a flash, his eyes welled up with tears. "I know you resent me, Ethan. I know you still have feelings for Isabella, but we're truly in love. We're together now." The heroine, Isabella Frost, could barely contain her disdain. "Ethan," she said coldly, "it seems your family's bankruptcy wasn't enough of a lesson for you. What new scheme are you trying to pull on Leo now? How had I ever pulled a scheme on this supposedly innocent hero? All I did was slap him when he insisted on bringing his boss, my fiancé, breakfast every single day, knowing full well we were engaged. I dragged him out of the passenger seat when Isabella came to pick me up, and he plopped himself up front, claiming he got carsick and couldn't sit in the back. And when they accidentally ended up in bed together and he tearfully confessed his love for her, I, as her fiancé, had him fired from the company. How is any of that villainous? It was clearly justified, a righteous defense of my relationship. But in this world of a powerful female CEO, if you don't bend to the whims of the main couple, you're automatically branded the villain. Isabella couldn't be bothered to give me another glance, obviously interpreting my stunt as some desperate plea for her affection. She held Leo and turned away, the Rolls-Royce disappearing into the distance like a mirage. Only then did I calmly pull out my phone and dial 911. "Hello, police. Someone just hit me with their car, yelled at me, and then drove off." It was a hit and run. Back at the police station, a livid Isabella Frost sat stiffly to one side. A young officer was lecturing her. "You're an adult. How could you just flee the scene after an accident? You can afford a Rolls-Royce, but can't afford to compensate the victim? Do you have any idea that a hit and run is a serious offense that can lead to detention and even jail time?" I chose that moment to clutch my forehead and say weakly, "I'm so dizzy, I think I'm going to be sick." Isabella's expression was beyond furious. She glared at me, hissing through clenched teeth, "Ethan, do you really think this will make me pay more attention to you?" The young officer finally lost his patience and slammed his hand on the table. "Look at me. You don't need to look at him. You need to look at this settlement agreement in my hand. If Mr. Vance doesn't sign it, you're going to jail." Isabella froze, clearly not having grasped the severity of the situation. She tried to argue. "He staged the whole thing to get money from me." "Are there any security cameras on that street?" the officer asked. "No," she admitted. "What about a dash cam?" "It's broken." Of course the dash cam was broken. The novel mentioned that her dash cam had conveniently broken right before this, and she hadn't gotten around to replacing it. Isabella was the CEO of a publicly traded company. If she went to jail, the stock price would tank overnight, and the board would have grounds to fire her. Seeing no way out, she tightened her jaw. "Ethan, how much money will it take for you to sign the agreement?" I rubbed my temples, sounding faint. My head hurt so much. 50,000. I think my skull might have a compound fracture. 500,000. Or maybe I should just check into a hospital for a few years. 5 million should cover it. The number was so big it made my own head spin. I immediately shot up and gave a small bow. "You're too generous, ma'am. I'll sign right now. And hey, if you ever plan another hit and run, be sure to give me a call." As night fell, I trudged back to my place in a rundown neighborhood in Queens. Even though I had prepared for the impact, aiming for the bushes to cushion my fall, I was still covered in bruises. Since the Vance family's bankruptcy, the once glamorous heir had become a social pariah. My fair-weather friends vanished, all my properties were auctioned off, and I was forced to live in this cramped, dingy apartment. This miserable existence, which the original Ethan would have dreaded, was a life I could only have dreamed of before. In my previous life, I was an orphan who struggled and scraped my way into college. While others my age were enjoying their youth, I was the guy with a sack, collecting cans and bottles from every trash bin on campus just to make enough money for the next month's rent. That was my life, right up until the car accident that killed me and brought me here. I hoisted a bag of recyclables onto my shoulder and started up the stairs. After being poor for so many years, it was second nature. Wherever I went, I'd pick up cardboard and plastic bottles to sell when I had enough. Life is tough, and every little bit helps. But this line of work has fierce competition, and my haul for the day was pretty small. At the top of the dim staircase, a woman with a gentle face but a heavy aura was standing in front of my apartment door. Upon seeing me, she spoke with a cold edge. "Ethan, hasn't the bankruptcy taught you anything? You're still hovering around Isabella like a ghost, and you made Leo so upset today. If you don't go and apologize to him, don't blame me for what happens next." I had to dig through the dusty archives of my mind to place her face. She was Khloe Sterling, my childhood friend and the novel's hopelessly devoted supporting female character. Before Leo showed up, Khloe and I were as close as siblings, and Isabella and I were known as the perfect, loving couple. But after the commoner hero arrived, Leo took my place in our little trio, while the original Ethan was left behind, obsessively clinging to the past. I lazily lifted my eyelids and glanced at her, my eyes lingering for a second on her waist. I must be going crazy from poverty, I thought, instinctively checking people out for their kidneys. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Khloe raised her voice. "Ethan, are you even listening to me? Go and give. Give." I cut her off, pretending to be confused. "Give you what?" I swiftly snatched the bottle of Evian from her hand, poured the rest of the water into a nearby planter, and expertly stomped the bottle flat before tossing it into my sack. Only after all that did I wipe the sweat from my brow and ask, "Sorry, what were you saying?" Chloe's eyes struggled to tear away from my sack of recyclables before her anger returned. "Leo found the lipstick you gave Isabella in her coat pocket, and he cried so hard he nearly fainted. How can you be so cruel, always trying to drive a wedge between them and making everyone miserable?" Khloe seemed to have forgotten that I was Isabella's actual fiancé. We had been engaged since we were teenagers, and when the Frost family's finances were on the verge of collapse, it was the Vance family that bailed them out with a huge sum of money. But after the hero showed up, everything changed. He'd stand before me with tears in his eyes, defiantly asking, "Mr. Vance, why do you insist on using money to tear Isabella and me apart? We're the ones who are truly in love." That was enough to tip Isabella's wavering heart completely off balance. She would glare at me viciously and say, "Besides his social status, in what way is Leo not better than you?" The Vance family's bankruptcy came swiftly after that, and my parents, unable to handle the shock, both died in a car crash. I was the one who planted that lipstick in her coat when I left the police station specifically to cause a fight between them. If it weren't for that psycho couple, I would have arrived in this world as the wealthy heir to the Vance fortune. I was so close to having a life with loving parents and all the money I could want. Cutting off my money is like desecrating my ancestors' graves. I swear I will get back every penny that was supposed to be mine with interest. I met Chloe's furious gaze and asked, "And how would you know that Leo cried until he almost fainted?" She gritted her teeth. "Leo had a fight with Isabella and ran out with nowhere to go, so he came to my place. Do you have any idea? He was crying so hard he couldn't even form a complete sentence, and he was clinging to my dress, begging me not to come and confront you. He told her not to come, yet here she was. A classic case of the devoted supporting girl. When the hero is happy, she watches from the sidelines. When he's in trouble, she's the first to rush to his aid. The novel even said Khloe was Leo's eternal regret, the one that got away after he chose the heroine. I don't get it. If he regretted it so much, why didn't the author just let the hero have both of them? They could all live in harmony, and he could divide his time between them. Surely that would have resolved all his regrets. Khloe stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Ethan, you're coming with me to apologize to Leo right now. She was acting completely unhinged, like she was high on something. I calmly shook off her grip, secured my sack, and pointed a thumb at the dilapidated building behind me. Do you know where you are? Khloe looked down her nose at me and said slowly, "This is the slums, isn't it? You're not the high and mighty Ethan Vance anymore. Living here is the price you pay for bullying Leo." I nodded, satisfied. The first rule of dealing with someone is to drag them down to your level, then beat them with experience. This was my home turf. In the dim hallway, I lowered my gaze, gathered my strength, and launched a flying kick at the unsuspecting Khloe. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the stairwell as she tumbled helplessly down the flight of stairs. Her left leg slammed against the hard concrete steps, and she shrieked in pain, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. Her scream activated the motion sensor light, illuminating the cold, triumphant look in my eyes. My voice was chillingly calm as I spoke down to her. "Khloe, you need to understand something. In a place like this, the security cameras are always broken." A wailing ambulance eventually came and took Khloe away. As they loaded her onto the stretcher, I heard her pained, hysterical shriek, "Ethan Vance, just you wait." Later, I lay on my narrow bed in that dark, cramped apartment, staring a yellow stain on the ceiling and trying to recall the details of the novel's plot. By the time I had moved into this dump, the main story had already concluded perfectly. The hero and heroine were living happily ever after, about to host a lavish wedding that was the envy of everyone. The devoted supporting girl, Khloe, though left with regrets, became a tragic favorite among the readers. The villainous supporting character, me, got his just desserts, much to the reader's delight. The main antagonist who opposed the heroine was also crushed, with no hope of recovery. The author's story ended right there, leaving no clue as to what happened after the perfect conclusion. I took a vicious bite of another greasy meat pie and focused my thoughts on the antagonist. In this world, I hadn't actually done anything wrong. I was just defending what was mine, yet I was branded a villain and treated like cannon fodder. And the main antagonist, Emma Sterling, had simply been a fair business competitor to the heroine, yet she was labeled treacherous and ruthlessly destroyed. I tossed the rest of my food and quickly recalled Emma's personal information from the novel's plot. Then I hailed a cab to Khloe's house. Night had fallen. Inside the brightly lit Sterling mansion, Khloe's leg was encased in a thick cast. Her body was confined to a small wheelchair, and her face was so pale she looked like she could reanimate as a corpse at any moment. When she saw me, her expression turned savage. "Ethan, it's no use coming to apologize now. I was going to cut you some slack, since we've known each other for 20 years, and just let you live out your days in that hovel. But now I see you'll never change your cruel ways." I craned my neck, looking around behind her. "Who said I was here to apologize? I heard you hurt your leg, so I brought some fruit that your sister likes. I came to see her. Speaking of which, where is Emma?" The mansion felt empty, and Khloe's shocked expression slowly froze on her face. It was only then that I remembered. Khloe's sister, the novel's main antagonist, Emma Sterling, had been stripped of her inheritance and kicked out of the family home long ago. Her current living situation was probably no better than mine. We were two peas in a pod, the cannon fodder and the villain, both destined for a miserable fate. I turned and left with a bag of fruit. Khloe seemed to be yelling something from her wheelchair, but I didn't catch it. Following a vague memory from the book, I found myself in the basement of an old apartment building in a rough part of New York City, knocking on a dilapidated door. The stench of stale alcohol and the sight of scattered bottles hit me as the door opened. Emma Sterling stood there, a shadow of her former glorious self, looking only defeated and resentful. After her part in the story was over, her fate had been no better than mine. While other powerful families were busy with their own succession battles, the Sterling family drama revolved around the two half-sisters, Emma and Khloe, fighting for control. After Emma was defeated by Isabella Frost, the Sterling family, wanting to curry favor, disowned her and named Khloe as the new heir. And just like that, the antagonist was cast aside. Emma barely lifted her eyelids, glancing at me listlessly. "Ethan Vance, are you here to laugh at my misfortune?" I shook my head and forced a smile. "I just brought some fruit you like. I came to see how you were doing." Emma's sharp eyes scanned the bag of apples in my hand. "Who's the vicious person spreading rumors that I like apples?" she said flatly. "They're the cheapest fruit. They're not sweet, not sour, and they're dry. Why would I possibly like them? They're cheap. Do you have any idea how bland and useless they are? They're cheap." Emma shut her mouth resentfully and took a long swig of liquor. A moment later, she frowned, picked up an apple, and reluctantly took a bite. Seeing my opening, I leaned in. Emma, do you want to make a comeback? She nearly choked on the bite of apple. I'm a sterling outcast, she said, her voice full of despair. How could I possibly make a comeback? I grabbed her by the collar and snarled, can you snap out of it and find some of that fire you had when you were fighting Isabella? You ate my apple. Now you're going to get up and work for it. Emma froze. Her brilliant mind processed this for half a second before she shakily raised a hand to her throat, apparently intending to spit the apple back out. I slapped her hand away, grabbed a water bottle, and forced a large swig of water down her throat to wash the apple down for good. Frost Industries is about to launch a new software, I said. I have a way to get it and make it ours. If we can just scrape together some capital, we can use this to turn everything around. Emma, who had been choking on the water, suddenly had a bright light in her eyes. Ethan, if you can get that software, I still have some money. I can invest all of it. I raised an eyebrow. A broke antagonist reduced to eating the cheapest fruit. How much money could she possibly have? A project this big would need tens of millions in seed money. Emma was living in a basement. She probably had a few $1,000s at most. I asked without much hope, how much do you have? 50. 50,000 is definitely not enough. We'll need. I stopped, grabbing her face and turning it to mine, our noses inches apart. How much did you say you have? 50 million, she clarified. When Isabella started targeting me, I had a feeling the Sterling family was going to cast me aside. So I moved some funds out of the company ahead of time. I looked at the woman in front of me with new eyes. She was a business prodigy, the only one who could ever truly go toe-to-toe with the heroine. If it weren't for Isabella's plot armor, Emma never would have lost. Here, in this damp basement, she was like a wolf in hibernation, just waiting for the right moment to strike. If I'd known she was this capable, I would have brought more expensive fruit. With the seed money secured, I finally relaxed and took a better look at her temporary home. The floor was littered with empty beer bottles, which made the poor hustler in me very excited. On instinct, I shook open my sack, squatted down, and started tossing all the bottles inside, expertly crushing the aluminum cans under my foot. Emma seemed embarrassed and reached for the sack. Let me get that. I instinctively pulled the sack behind me, guarding it. What are you doing? I saw them first. They're mine. You can't have them. Emma's hand froze in midair. After a long moment, her eyes grew red, and she turned her head away, murmuring, a man from a wealthy family, doing this kind of menial work for me. I've been in this state for so long, and you're the first person to be this kind to me. Her tears made no sense to me. Even later, as I sat in a private room at a restaurant, feeling the $17.50 the recycling center had given me in my pocket, I was still confused. All I did was take her empty bottles. Why was she crying about it? Across from me sat Mr. Davis. When the Vance family was at its zenith, our families were close. After our fall, he quickly cut ties with us and started working with the Frosts. Now, the portly man lit a cigarette and said slowly, Ethan, my boy, if you're going to ask for a favor, you need to show a little humility. The entire plot of the novel was burned into my brain from the moment I arrived. Mr. Davis had married into his wife's wealthy family. After using their resources to make his own fortune, he started keeping a string of mistresses on the side, claiming it was to reclaim his masculine pride. But he still wasn't powerful enough to break away from his wife's family. In the cozy private room, I smiled sweetly. Mr. Davis, you misunderstand. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to threaten you. If you don't help me get my hands on Frost Industries' new software, I'll make sure every gossip columnist in New York City knows about the 6 illegitimate children you're hiding. The new product that Frost Industries had been hyping for months was launched first by me and Emma. For the first time since the novel's official ending, the cannon fodder and the antagonist had finally done something truly villainous. The Frost stock price plummeted, but Emma and I couldn't celebrate. The project was a massive cash burn, and the $55 million we had invested would only last us a couple more weeks. Seeing the growing exhaustion in Emma's eyes, I patted her shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry, I have a plan to get more funding. The novel's epilogue mentioned a high society gala happening the next day. An event like that would be the perfect place to make a deal. That short epilogue also briefly described our fates. Unable to cope with the fall from grace, I was supposed to have killed myself in my tiny apartment. Emma, having become a severe alcoholic, was supposed to die of a heart attack after a binge, her body not being discovered for days. But here we were, both very much alive and kicking, and working together to make the hero and heroine's lives difficult. I snuck into the gala, and just as I dropped down from a low wall, a furious voice hissed behind me. Ethan, what are you doing here? I'm not finished with you for what you did to my leg. It was Khloe. She was still in a wheelchair, The cast on her left leg had just come off, but she couldn't walk on it yet. After her outburst, she seemed to reconsider, and her angry expression softened. Can't handle being poor anymore? Have you finally come to your senses and decided to apologize to Leo? If you can admit you were wrong and promise to change, I'll consider letting you off the hook so you can live out the rest of your life in peace. I didn't think my life was hard at all. It was 1,000 times better than my previous one. Khloe had been so preoccupied with her injury that she had no idea Emma and I had started a company. I figured it would be best if her leg took a little longer to heal, so the Sterling family wouldn't pay any attention to what Emma was up to. I carefully scanned our surroundings. The nearest security camera was obscured by the thick leaves of a sycamore tree. We were in a perfect blind spot, and no one else was around. I put on a gentle smile and softened my voice. Khloe, which leg was it that you hurt last time? A look of relief spread across Khloe's face. What? Is your memory that bad? You forgot I injured my left leg? Still, since you're willing to be reasonable, I suppose I can forgive what you did. I viciously kicked her perfectly healthy right leg. Khloe cried out in pain and tumbled from her wheelchair, which then fell on top of her, leaving her whimpering on the ground. I felt fantastic. I had finally gotten a little revenge for Emma. The Sterling family fortune should have been Emma's. But after her mother died, Khloe's mother, the mistress, moved in and took her place. Slowly but surely, Emma's inheritance was transferred to her younger half-sister, and thus, a gloomy, resentful antagonist with a painful childhood was born. I brushed the dirt from my clothes, gave Khloe's right leg another precise kick to silence her whimpering, and then headed straight for the 3rd floor of the venue. I knew the hero, Leo, was in a private room up there. The pretty boy from the slums was about to marry into a powerful family, and his good looks were his only real asset. Because of that, Leo always made sure his appearance was absolutely perfect at any public event, never allowing for a single flaw. When Leo saw me, he was startled at first, but then a contemptuous smile spread across his face. Ethan, I know you're bitter, but what can your bitterness change? It won't be long before I'm officially part of the Frost family. He assumed I was there to beg Isabella to take me back. After all, everyone believed I was madly in love with her. But now, all I wanted was to make money, specifically the money that the hero and heroine controlled. A cunning light glinted in Leo's eyes. He had often used the Ethan is bullying me excuse to gain advantages in the past, and now he was trying to pull the same trick to solidify his marriage prospects. After he and Isabella got together, their class differences became a major issue, and she wasn't as doting as she used to be. Every romance novel ends the moment the main couple is about to get married, never showing whether they actually live happily ever after. Standing on the edge of the room's low balcony, Leo grabbed my hand, his face alight with a strange excitement. I remembered the countless times he had framed me just like this. He would time it perfectly so that just as Isabella arrived, he would be tearfully begging me to leave him alone, sometimes even slapping himself and then telling her with a brave face, "It's not Ethan's fault. If hitting me makes him feel better, then it's fine." Unfortunately for him, I knew this routine by heart. I may not understand investing or high finance, but the one thing I do know is how to drag my opponents down to my level and beat them with my own brand of experience. The balcony was on the 3rd floor, but when I glanced down, it looked more like the 5th floor of a regular building. In the distance, I could see Isabella heading our way. I lowered my voice and said with a menacing grin, "Guess what would happen to you if I were to fall from here?" The color drained from Leo's face. The next second, as his eyes widened in terror, I violently threw off his hand and made it look as though he had pushed me, sending myself plummeting from the 3rd floor balcony. Screams erupted from all around. In the moment I fell, I even heard someone yell, "Leo Carter just killed someone." I saw him push Ethan Vance off the balcony. Someone called the police. Leo's horrified face grew smaller and smaller above me as the wind rushed past my ears. After a brief fall, I landed squarely in a decorative pool that jutted out over the 1st floor. By the time the police arrived, I was sitting with my wet hair a mess, wrapped in a large towel, looking far more innocent than the hero. Leo was shaking his head frantically. "It wasn't me. He jumped. He's trying to frame me." Isabella's face was grim, and the whispers of the other guests were clearly humiliating her. "Leo," she said, "I saw you push Ethan. If that pool hadn't been there to catch him, he would have been killed. How could you have become this kind of person?" That last question made the color drain from Leo's lips. Once upon a time, she used to say those exact words to me. Every time she was convinced I had framed her precious Leo, she would ask with disappointment, "Ethan, how could you become this kind of person?" What happened to the innocent boy you used to be? Now, the boomerang had finally come back around and hit Leo. Isabella turned to me, her expression tinged with guilt. Ethan, I know you've been wrong today, but the Frost family stock has been dropping lately, and we can't afford any more negative press. If you're willing to settle this quietly, I'll compensate you. In the past, whenever Leo falsely accused me, Isabella would immediately snap. Ethan, how can you be so cruel? But now that her precious hero was the one at fault, her only thought was to cover up the scandal. I knew Isabella had been under a lot of stress lately. Her new project had been stolen, and the board was tearing her apart over it. Mr. Davis was in the thick of it, playing the part of the thief who cries thief. He was the loudest of her critics, acting like a victimized shareholder on the verge of ruin. To this day, Isabella still had no idea who the corporate spy was, nor did she know that the new company that had mysteriously appeared was founded by me and Emma. With her wedding to Leo just around the corner, she absolutely could not afford another scandal. I expertly chose that moment to clutch my forehead, where a faint bruise from the car accident still lingered, adding to my fragile appearance. My head hurt so much. Falling from that height, I must have a concussion from hitting the water. 300,000. My lungs hurt too. I swallowed so much pool water, I feel like I might not make it through the night. 3 million. The price was going up too slowly. This was annoying. I pulled my phone, still in its waterproof case, from my pocket and said with a tearful voice, I'm just a nobody. I guess I'll just have to post on Twitter and ask what the legal options are for attempted murder. Don't. Isabella gritted her teeth. 30 million. That sum would wipe out nearly a third of her liquid capital. I quickly put my phone away, clutched my towel like a frightened animal, and gave a small, obedient bow. Your class act, ma'am. If you ever need someone for another attempted murder, you know who to call. Just as the money hit my account, and I was about to happily take my leave, a familiar voice called out from the crowd. Ethan. I was pulled into a warm embrace. Emma had appeared from out of nowhere, her face etched with anxiety as she looked me up and down. You fell from so high, are you hurt? I cut her off, whispering excitedly in her ear. The Frost paid 30 million in damages. We have our funding now. I'll buy you some expensive fruit tonight. But Emma's face showed no sign of the excitement I expected. Instead, it was filled with a towering rage. Is money more important than your life? You fell from that high up. Were you trying to get yourself killed? Do you have any idea how worried I was? I don't want other fruit. I only like apples. She held me so tightly, I felt as stiff as a statue. No one had ever said they were worried about me before. My 20-odd years of life had been a lonely, barren existence. The only feelings I knew deep in my bones were hunger and poverty. In my previous life, the fruit I ate most often was apples. They were cheap, filling, and sometimes, if I was lucky, I'd find a few perfectly good ones while collecting recyclables. Now, it felt like a light was shining into my dark world for the first time, and it almost hurt. As Emma held me, my own arms felt stiff and awkward, unsure where to go. I didn't know if I should push her away or hug her back just as tightly. A soft voice whispered in my ear, Ethan, you're all I've left in this world. Promise me you'll always be here, okay? Pressed against her, I could feel her body trembling. The truth was, in this strange new world, she was all I had left too. A harsh shout shattered the moment. Ethan, what is your relationship with her? It was Isabella, her face dark with an ugly expression, as if she'd just caught me cheating on her. I frowned. I was no longer her fiancé. I was busy starting a new chapter in my life, so who I hugged was none of her business. Before I could answer, Emma suddenly leaned in and asked with a pitiful look, Ethan, could you maybe get a bed for me at your place? To save money, Emma had already moved into my apartment. She took the bedroom, and I slept on the couch. It was definitely a tight squeeze for me every night. Thinking about the 30 million that had just landed in my account, I generously patted her shoulder. Done. Tonight I'll get you a new bed, a big, sturdy one that won't break no matter how much you toss and turn on it. A few people around us snickered, giving us suggestive looks. I took Emma's hand and led her away, completely ignoring Isabella's darkening expression. Outside, an ambulance was pulling up. Emma immediately pushed me towards it. Go to the hospital and get checked out. Make sure there are no lasting injuries from that fall. As the ambulance sped away, a paramedic calmly handed me a form. So you're the one who called about the broken leg? Make sure you get x-rays as soon as we get to the hospital. I was speechless. If the ambulance wasn't for me, then who on earth was it for? After we injected the 30 million into the company, the project finally became profitable. Emma truly was a business genius, the only one in the story who could ever match the heroine. In just 1 month, she managed to steal several major contracts from Isabella, establishing our company as a direct competitor to Frost Industries. But I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Every time I went out, I felt like I was being watched. This went on for about 2 weeks, until one night, as I was walking home through a deserted alley, a strong pair of hands dragged me into the shadows. A cloth was pressed over my mouth, and I blacked out. I woke up on a rocky, windswept beach. The salty smell of the ocean filled my nose, and in the distance, I could hear waves crashing against a cliff face. Lying next to me was the hero, Leo Carter, also bound and gagged. His face was lit with a triumphant glow. "Ethan, today I'm going to prove to you that I'm the only one worthy of being a Frost, and that Isabella will always choose me." There was a manic energy in his voice, like he was on something. I looked at him with disdain. "Have you been reading too many cheesy billionaire romance novels?" Leo didn't seem to hear me. He was completely lost in his own manic fantasy. 6 months ago, he had pulled the same stunt, staging his own kidnapping and disappearing. Isabella had blamed me, grabbing me by the throat and screaming, "Ethan, why are you so cruel? Why do you always have to go after the people I care about?" Everyone assumed I had done it out of jealous rage. After that incident, Isabella looked at me with nothing but hatred. When Leo was rescued, she clung to him like he was a priceless treasure she had almost lost. But now the plot had gone off script. According to the epilogue, the hero and heroine were supposed to have their grand wedding a week after the gala, becoming the power couple everyone talked about. But a month had passed, the wedding had been postponed multiple times, and Leo's dream of marrying into wealth was on shaky ground. It was the middle of the night, the sky filled with stars, and the waves crashed relentlessly against the cliffs. A car screeched to a halt nearby, and Isabella came stumbling towards us. The kidnapper grinned menacingly, yanked me to my feet, and held a knife to my throat. "You can only choose one," he yelled, "and I want $50 million. Once the money is transferred, I'll let the other one go." The cold steel of the blade against my skin made me shiver. It reminded me of my death in my previous life, lying on the hard pavement after the car crash, feeling the warmth slowly drain from my body. Isabella stood a short distance away, looking annoyed. "Ethan, what are you playing at now? Do you really think staging these kidnappings is going to make me pay attention to you?" She still thought I was the one behind it all, trying to ruin her relationship with Leo. Khloe, who had just arrived in her wheelchair, yelled at me, "Ethan, haven't you caused enough trouble? Dragging us all out here in the middle of the night just to watch your little show." Both of her legs were now in casts, but a little thing like that wasn't going to stop the devoted girl from rushing to save her hero. Isabella's gaze rested on me for a brief moment before she announced the choice I already knew she would make. "Since you insist on this drama, I'll play along. I choose Leo." A triumphant smile spread across Leo's face, and he whispered in my ear, "See that? Everyone who used to be on your side now chooses me." After this, Isabella will finally realize that I'm the only one for her. She can only be mine. I looked blankly at the scene before me. The heroine, hopelessly devoted to the hero, and the supporting girl, hopelessly devoted to him as well. My eyes scanned the crowd, but I couldn't see Emma anywhere. Perhaps she didn't even know I'd been taken. She had been so buried in work at the company lately, she might not have even gone home tonight. The knife was still in my throat as Leo embraced Isabella. They didn't even bother to glance my way, confident that without an audience, I'd give up my act and slink away like a clown. I glanced back at the churning water below the cliff. It wasn't too high. I figured if I jumped, I could probably swim the half-mile to shore. The kidnapper was still putting on his show. "Hurry up with the 50 million or else." A scream cut through the night. Before the man could finish his sentence, he was knocked unconscious by a heavy blow from behind. The novel's true antagonist had arrived. Emma was clearly shaken, her voice trembling. "This is all my fault. I should have come home with you instead of letting you go back alone." Her fingers were raw and bleeding, as if she had clawed her way up the cliff face. "When I first went bankrupt, I used to come here every day to drink," Emma explained. "So I know this area well. There's a hidden path up the rocks on the right side, and the sound of the waves covers your footsteps. So she had been here all along." In the distance, the first light of dawn began to break through the darkness. I turned and wrapped my arms around Emma, and we held each other tightly as the sun began to rise. The sound of police sirens grew closer. The expression on the hired actor's face was priceless, shifting from confusion to shock, then to pure terror. He finally broke down and yelled, "Mr. Carter, we agreed this was just an act. Why did you call the cops?" The man shakily pulled out his phone, trying to explain. "It was Mr. Carter. He hired me to put on this show. He gave me a $20,000 advance, and promised another $30,000 after he married into the Frost family. Some jerk has been cleaning out all the recycling bins on my route lately, so I had to take this side gig to make ends meet. You can't call the cops on me. The rising sun cast a harsh light on Leo's deathly pale face. His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed. He, who had always gotten away with his schemes, had never imagined that Emma would actually call the police. It seemed my arrival had patched all the plot holes in this story, making the ridiculous plot lines suddenly make sense. The salty wind blew across everyone's faces. It took a long time for Isabella to recover from her shock. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were filled with shame, embarrassment, and overwhelming guilt. She reached a hand out to me. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I always thought it was you. I never knew you were the one being framed. The Fiancées were already bankrupt. My parents were already dead. A little late for an apology, wasn't it?" Khloe, still in her wheelchair, was also devastated by the truth. She couldn't believe the man she adored could have such a cruel heart. As the police prepared to make arrests, the hired actor, screaming his innocence and panicking, grabbed the knife from the ground and lunged at Leo. "You tricked me. You were going to let me go to jail. I'll kill you." The blade was inches from him, but Leo was frozen in fear, unable to move. In that split second, Emma and I exchanged a look, and in perfect sync, we both kicked Khloe's wheelchair. The devoted girl was sent flying, colliding with the attacker. The knife, by pure chance, plunged into Khloe's right arm. She had saved her beloved hero, fulfilling her tragic destiny. And once again, I heard that familiar, ear-splitting scream. The police quickly subdued the man. I brushed the sand off my clothes and turned to meet Isabella's guilt-ridden gaze. "My head hurts. If we don't settle on a generous amount for my emotional distress today, I am not dropping the charges." "Ethan, don't worry," she said. "I won't pay to cover for him this time." "You know, you really could," I suggested. "No. Now that the truth is out, I will not tolerate such cruelty from the man I'm supposed to marry. I could ask for a little less this time." I offered. "Even if you asked for nothing, I would not protect him," Isabella said with finality. It was the first failed negotiation of my new life. The money was gone, and with no other outlet for my frustration, I gave Khloe's leg a resentful kick, earning a grunt of pain. An ambulance wailed as it arrived on the now crowded beach. Ignored by everyone, Khloe struggled to pull herself toward it. "Help," she cried. "I'm the one who called. Don't you dare leave without me again." Emma and Isabella resumed their old rivalry, but this time was different. Without her protagonist plot armor, Isabella suffered a series of business failures, and her corporate empire began to crumble. The Frost family's cash flow dried up. They had faced a similar crisis once before, but back then, the Vance family had bailed them out. Now, there was no one to save her. Her grand wedding to Leo was postponed indefinitely. As the first autumn of my new life arrived, I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Vance, the CEO of Frost Industries, is here to see you." I frowned for a moment before declining the meeting. But Isabella, apparently out of options, waited stubbornly outside my office building, determined to see me. She stayed there from morning until dusk. The office was buzzing with gossip. I knew she was here to negotiate a truce. Emma had been relentless, and Isabella had no defense left. She was probably hoping to offer us a stake in her company to avoid total liquidation. I rubbed my aching temples and had my assistant show her to a conference room. She looked much more worn down than before. In the conference room, she was holding a thick stack of share transfer agreements. When she looked up and saw my calm face, she froze. After a long moment, her voice was filled with shock and a strange delight. "Ethan, you're the one who founded this company? This is wonderful. Let's get married. If you invest in Frost Industries, we can definitely survive this." I had to admire her audacity. I suspected the real reason she hadn't married Leo yet was that in a crisis, she realized a strategic marriage alliance was her best bet. The pretty boy from the slums was a fun diversion, but utterly useless when things got serious. I lazily raised my eyelids. "Invest in Frost Industries? So you can get back on your feet and then stab me in the back." A wave of embarrassment washed over her face, and she lowered her head. "Ethan, everything in the past was a misunderstanding. Leo deceived me. Can we start over? Start over? Can my parents' lives start over?" My parents in this world had died in a car crash. The Vance family had been under so much pressure that they'd gotten distracted while driving to an out-of-state business meeting, lost control, and hit a guardrail. Both were killed instantly. If I had arrived in this world just 3 months earlier, I could have prevented that accident. While Isabella didn't directly cause their deaths, she was indirectly responsible. My real plan was to take all her money and then send her to join them. Isabella looked at me, her eyes a mixture of pain and hope. "Ethan, you do still love me, don't you?" I looked up at her, my own voice filled with anticipation. "Do you have any money left?" Her confidence immediately vanished. "No. In fact, I'm hundreds of millions in debt. But that's okay. Once we get new funding and the company recovers, I'm sure I can earn it all back and more." The old Ethan who didn't care about money was gone, replaced by me, a hustler who loved money more than life itself. She had no money, and she was wasting my time? I slammed my hand on the table. "Then what are you doing here? Get out before I ship you off to sell your kidneys on the black market." After security dragged Isabella out, I took a bag of fruit and headed to the Sterling mansion. After Emma had decisively crushed the Frosts, no one in the Sterling family dared to oppose her. The family fortune was now firmly back in her hands. It also helped that the Sterlings had consulted some psychic who told them Khloe was destined for a short, unlucky life full of disasters, and that Emma was the far more suitable choice to lead the family. Inside the mansion, I saw Khloe, still in her wheelchair. Her eyes lit up with a pleasant surprise when she saw me. "Ethan, are you here to see me?" I held up the bag of apples. "I heard your arm is still healing, so I brought some apples for your sister. I came to see her." "Where is Emma?" Khloe's face fell. "Ethan, we can never go back to the way things were, can we? When people hit rock bottom, they always get nostalgic for the past." Khloe had nothing now. The first thing Emma did after retaking control of the Sterling family was to strip her of all power. Even I held more Sterling stock than Khloe did. She sat there in her wheelchair, the cast finally off her legs, but her right arm still in a sling from the stabbing. She looked completely defeated, a far cry from the spirited girl who had helped Isabella take down my family. I walked over and patted her on the shoulder. "You may have lost everything else," I said comfortingly, "but you still have love. And look, here he comes now." Leo Carter had just appeared at the mansion's front gate. The kidnapping fiasco had ended with him spending a few days in jail, and his dream wedding had become a fantasy. The collapse of the Frost Empire drove a permanent wedge between him and Isabella, and they had broken up after a massive fight. He didn't want to go back to his old life in the slums, and luckily for him, he still had the devoted supporting girl. After all the drama, the backup option was finally getting her chance. The hero's greatest regret was about to be resolved. I excitedly pulled out an apple and started munching on it, ready to witness this historic moment. But to my surprise, Khloe frantically started wheeling herself away with her good hand, desperately trying to get away from Leo. "Stay away from me," she yelled in terror. Leo looked like he was about to cry. "Khloe, are you abandoning me too?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You always said that if I ever turn around, you'd be there waiting for me." I burst out laughing. Her legs were still weak, one of her arms was useless, and she could barely stand on her own. How was she supposed to be standing behind him? That psychic's prediction about her being cursed by a malevolent star must have gotten to her. She had clearly decided that Leo was that star. If she had never met him, she wouldn't have lost her fortune, her power, or the use of her limbs. Faced with a choice between love and survival, the devoted girl had cowardly chosen survival. Pathetic. A slender, elegant hand reached into my bag, took out an apple, and bit into it. I turned to see Emma's smiling face. "Ethan," she said, "have all the details been finalized?" I nodded slightly. Our new company was officially in my name, and I now personally held 20% of the Sterling family stock. Khloe slammed her hand on her wheelchair. "Ethan, finalized what? I'm a Sterling too. It's bad enough you didn't give me any shares, but now you're keeping secrets from me." Emma's expression turned stern. "You don't get to call him Ethan. From now on, you will call him your brother-in-law." My arrival had tacked on a shoddy, unofficial sequel to this already finished story. The hero and heroine never got their wedding of the century from the epilogue. Instead, my wedding to Emma arrived first. As I took Emma's hand and we walked down the aisle, I heard a commotion from outside the ballroom. Leo, dressed in cheap clothes, burst in. His eyes were bloodshot, and he stared at me with pure, venomous hatred. "Why?" he screamed. "Why did the plot change? I was supposed to be the one everyone envied. Ethan, you were supposed to kill yourself in that crappy apartment, and Emma was supposed to die in that basement. Why are you still alive?" He was completely unhinged. He suddenly pulled a knife from his sleeve and lunged at me. The crowd panicked and scattered, all except for Khloe, who sat frozen in her wheelchair, her face pale with terror. Her legs had healed enough for her to stand with crutches, but as she tried to get away, she was just a second too slow. Emma and I exchanged a look, and without a word, we both grabbed Khloe and used her as a human shield. "An older brother is like a father. An older sister is like a mother," she shrieked. "Have you two learned nothing about family? Let me go, you despicable couple." The knife plunged into Khloe's uninjured left arm. As security dragged Leo away, Khloe collapsed on the floor, twitching and sobbing. I don't love him anymore. I really can't love him anymore. Can someone please just call 911 for me? I watched as they dragged Leo away. In my mind, the pages of the novel flipped to the epilogue, but the words had changed. I saw a new ending where Isabella ended up in a basement, drinking her life away until one night she collapsed, clutching her chest, and never got up again. And Leo, after serving several years in prison for assault, was released and ended up in a rundown attic in some forgotten neighborhood, where he eventually took his own life. My vision blurred for a moment. Emma gently tugged my hand. "Ethan, what are you thinking about?" I came back to my senses and looked at her. Her eyes were bright and full of life, the old shadows of her past finally gone. I leaned down and kissed her on the forehead. "I was just wondering why you like apples so much." "Because," she said with a simple smile, "they're delicious."